I would like to follow you.
You would?
No.
I would like to spread this ministry far and wide as fast as possible.
No, don't do it.
Well, in that case, Judas, follow me.
No!
Alright guys, so in this video, we are going to be taking a look at the first episode of The Chosen Season 3. Some of you guys have been absolutely hyped about this, so I wanted to dive in and get my own thoughts. So let's dive in and see what we think about this first episode. Alright. So I watched the entire episode through like 2 times because I wanted to get a fully comprehensive thought. I still don't even know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to try to tell you guys kind of what I think. So if I had to give you guys a snapshot review, like in one word or in one hand gesture, did I like the episode? I would put my thumb right about here.
I was not expecting that.
Let me explain my line of thought. The episode was good, but I also feel like it was lacking in a couple elements, particularly an overarching tension and underwhelming dialogue or interactions, and what otherwise could have been a couple key moments in this episode. Let me talk about the tension real quick. To explain why tension is so important, let me take you back to your childhood. Let's say you're in your room playing on the Atari 2600. How old do I think these viewers are? And all of a sudden, in the other room, you hear mom and dad start arguing, and that split second, your mind is instantly completely off of the video game and you can't help but hear every word that they say. There's a reason why you can't help but not notice conflict, and it's because human brains are just wired to, I don't know if attract is the word, but to notice conflict.
Because I love arguing, it's just so much fun.
And that is true in entertainment also. When entertainment has well-established conflict, it is engaging and interesting. When there's a lack of conflict, it comes across as kind of dull and boring. So this episode definitely had conflict, but there was a lack of overarching conflict that at the end of the episode made me feel like, oh my goodness, I have to keep watching to see what happens. I understand their world building with this first episode, but I feel like there could have been a little bit more of that conflict that at the end made me feel like I had to watch another episode. But we'll keep talking about that, and by their point, I want to get into the storyline a little bit. We start off with Matthew, back when he was a bad boy working for the Romans, and we find out that he actually almost got his father arrested for being late on tax payments. Now that would be like me working for the IRS and being the person who sent the police to arrest my parents for tax evasion. No, I'm not confessing my parents have tax evaded. They haven't, okay?
Calling IRS.
No, what? No, stop! But you can definitely see how there would be a large amount of conflict as Matthew's parents end up literally leaving him for dead in their heads. That would be like Mr. Beast's Buried Alive for 50 Hours video, except with a twist, burying my son from my mind for the rest of my life. We switch from that to the Beatitudes, which was something I was always a little curious how The Chosen was going to handle, because this is one of Jesus's most famous but yet most lengthy teachings. Now, some of you guys watching this were literally prepared to fall asleep, but I feel like the episode handled it very well. It ended up coming out to literally only 6 minutes and was actually very well edited. Basically, when Jesus would talk about a point, it would often edit to someone who that applied to add a kind of personal touch to it. For example, if he talked about love your enemies, it would show a Roman on the screen. And if he said make amends with your brother, it would cut to Matthew tearing up as he's thinking about people that he's wronged in the past. So it was edited in a way that was also very emotional with the musical score and just handled in a very good way. I think it was very well trimmed to some of the most important points. I don't know that someone actually could have handled the Beatitudes better than that. It was very well handled. And besides, if it was too long, what are you going to do? Tell God that he preached for too long?
Did you approve of the sermon?
A little long, but effective.
It was wonderful.
So once the message is over, Judas formally renounces his business connections with his partner and ends up going to Jesus to request to follow him. Now, this is a big moment. This is what I was talking about in the intro as what I considered a rather underwhelming moment. This is one of the most important moments of this season, arguably. This is kind of the Benedict Arnold of the Bible. And so this whole interaction, I'm wondering, is there going to be some type of foreshadow, kind of pointing to what Judas is going to do in the future? Because Jesus obviously knew, or half-heartedly expecting some voice to boom out of the sky saying, Judas,
You are evil.
None of that happened, and we actually get no foreshadowing of the future. Jesus is actually warm and welcoming to Judas, which would be expected, but nothing that kind of shows he knows what's going to happen in the future. To the extent that if you had never read the Bible and watched this, you would actually think Judas is one of the good guys. You would think, wow, I like this guy. He's gonna go places. He comes off as youthful, energetic. In mannerisms, I say he actually acts more youthful and young than any of the other disciples, really. He comes off as actually likable. So I feel like they really missed out on an opportunity to have a deeper, more meaningful interaction here. And I'm sure it was all for a reason, but it was not what I was expecting. So maybe you were expecting something different when you watched that particular moment. We also get a moment where someone from Herod's court who has a message from John comes to speak with Jesus, and Andrew interacts with her and he's frantic. He wants to see his former teacher. There's a little heartwarming interaction there as he goes back with her to see John, because this is probably one of the last times we'll see John alive in this TV show, because as we know from the scriptures, John pretty soon is going to be beheaded for speaking up about his faith, and it's likely going to happen this season. So this is probably one of the, if not the last interaction we get between his disciple and John, and so because of that, it just adds extra weight to this interaction. So as the disciples start parting, because they're all going on kind of a hiatus and a break, we get some interesting interactions between them. They're all kind of partnering up as far as who's going to go where. We get a little romance.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Yeah. And it's actually some really humorous moments as the disciples decide who goes where. For example, Peter just wants to be alone with his wife, but it's not happening, pal.
Hi.
Oh, hello.
And then James, all James wants, he's a simple man. Look, this is all he wants.
I wake up every morning, and after every nap, having dreamt about just one thing.
You're going to tell me what, I'll bet?
Ima's cinnamon cakes.
You just gotta hit the $3.99 synonym rolls. I mean, synonym.
See, I can relate with that. And so it's rather humorous seeing some of the interactions. We get a little bit of the conflict. The story does kind of lose pace here, and this is where it kind of starts treading water, because I wouldn't say these interactions add necessarily to the story as a whole, but it doesn't slow down the episode too much. It's pretty interesting just watching the disciples interact and just how they get along with each other, and that's always interesting to watch regardless of the episode. We also get an ancient bro shake. I knew that wasn't just a 21st century thing. We also get a bit of a side story where Yusuf, who was listening to Jesus' sermon, is frantic to write down his thoughts in the synagogue as he is a rabbi, but he also doesn't want to get in trouble for writing about a rogue preacher. But it turns out Jairus is the new synagogue administrator. He comes in later in the Gospels as the father of a girl that Jesus raises from the dead. He offers to help Yusuf keep his writings confidential, and so almost aligning himself in a way that in the future we can expect him to become favorable to Jesus. So there's a little bit of that story where it builds that up a little bit.
Are you perhaps writing of unusual things?
The most.
Other than all that, we get a few minor developments, but not much more happens. I don't really want to go into too many details to run this video up and also spoil what happens. We do end up with the cliffhanger with a final interaction between Matthew and his parents. That also goes in episode 2, and I'm not going to spoil that for you guys, but that's the main thing the episode ends with to keep you wanting to watch the next episode. So as far as my overall thoughts, like I've already stated, I feel like this could have used a little more strategic tension, especially some points of no return where something happens that the characters can't end up backing out of that will just leave you with this sense of tension that has to be resolved, and you have to keep watching to see how it's resolved. Again, I don't mean to beat that dead horse. I already talked about that. The character development was very good. The characters are always well developed in this TV show. They're likable.
I like it.
Their dialogue is incredible. You can relate with them so well, and you're kind of just left wanting to watch more so you can see how they develop as characters. So that was always handled well. As far as like the music in this was very good. There was actually this moment where there's like this guitar grating. It is actually kind of funny because like that was something I put out in just a previous episode from something else. I personally wasn't bothered by the duration of the episode. Some people might not like this being an hour long, but that's pretty normal for like the first episode of a chosen TV show at this point, so that didn't bother me at all. But all in all, I'd say it was a fairly decent episode. It just wasn't perfect. There were just some things that could have been a little bit better about it, and hey, nothing's ever going to be perfect. So I'm curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are. Did you watch this episode? Did you like it? If you haven't yet, or if you have, what do you think about my review? Do you agree with my thoughts? Would you disagree with anything that I've said? Either way, I'm curious to hear what you guys think, so be chatty in the comments below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. God bless. As a Christ follower, I've made the resolution to take every opportunity possible to share my faith with the world. If you've never given your life to Christ, I'd love to share with you how Christ has transformed the man that I've become. I've attached my email onto this video where you can shoot me a quick email, and I'd love to have that conversation. Or if you're a Christian struggling with your faith or just looking for ways to grow closer to God, I'd love to have that conversation with you. With that, you guys have an awesome day. God bless.